Good morning, everyone. As we come here today, we go to the story today right away to Genesis 27. Jacob steals the blessing from Isaac, right? So most of us have heard this story as Isaac's at probably around, Luther wants to say 137 years of age. He's at the end of his life. Tells Esau to go out and to bring some livestock in, and he's going to give him a final blessing. Now Rebecca hears this, Jacob's mom, and Esau's mom, and as she hears this, she goes and tells Jacob. She says, "Hey, go out. Let's devise this plan. We want to get the blessing from Isaac." And he says, "Well," Jacob says, "Well, I don't look anything like Isaac. I don't have that hair. I don't have this." She goes, "Go and we'll put that hair on you and make you smell like Isaac, and go out and get some choice livestock and bring it in, and we'll steal the blessing." So Jacob goes, they put the hair on him, sort of make him look like Isaac. He goes in, or makes him look like Esau. He goes in, and Isaac gives him the final blessing, right? The final blessing that he would be blessed, the blessing that all nations would bow down towards him. As he leaves, he's received the final blessing from Isaac. He has Rebekah and Jacob have come up with the plan to scheme the plan to steal the blessing from Isaac. Esau comes back in. He's ready for the blessing. Finally, Isaac says has already given him the blessing. Finally, Esau realized that Jacob has stolen his blessing. He gets a lesser blessing. He's greatly angered, greatly perplexed that his own brother has stolen his blessing. And this is the great conflict now between families. Now, as you read through this verse, we sit and we wonder, now, what does this actually mean for all of us today? Remember, at the very beginning of the story, God had already given the blessing to Jacob. We already know from the story that Esau had already sacrificed for a meal and given up his birthright to Jacob, right? But in the midst of this, what we see is families and great divisions of families and cunning and treachery and hurtful things that often happen. And as I ask you today, and families today, do we still have that? Of course we have that, right? We are all human beings, and even though we have faith in Jesus Christ, who's our Savior, our salvation has already been won through what Jesus has already done. We remain also sinners. Every single day we have sin in our lives where we hurt our family members. We say bad stuff to our family members. Families break up in one way or another. Families today no longer get together like they used to for family meals. The coronavirus is really tough on all of us, right? Because it's keeping families away from each other. Families haven't been gathering like they've been doing, right? But there's often these little petty arguments in families that are often a disaster. In our story here, biblically, we can see that Jacob was already promised by God that he would be the one who the seed of Jesus Christ would come from. We see the cunning ability of Rebekah to get together with Jacob to steal that blessing from Isaac to keep that going. We see how hurtful it is, how Esau is greatly hurt by this. In your own life today, how are you doing with your family, right? And you call up your family, make sure that you tell them that mom and dad that you love them. One of the toughest things I ever had in my life was a person whose son committed suicide. And I can still hear the father's cries. I wish I would have made up with my son on that little petty argument that I had. Well, today God's given you a new day, right? Even though as we see that this destruction with Esau and Jacob, we're now going to see how God, in the midst of all these tragedies, continues to work to fulfill the promise and do God's work in the midst of these terrible things. In the midst of your terrible family environments, God still forgives no matter what might have happened. You can be the one who calls up the family member and says, "Forgive me, I love you, let's start over." In the midst, God continues to work in these families. May God be with you today.